Go live. Okay, so Jared Kirby is someone that I've personally worked with in the past. Jared,
Hey,
how you doing, sir?
good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a long, long time, Jared. I don't even know if you even remember when you and I worked together. It's been many, many moons since you and I crossed paths in the New York Shakespeare scene. I think it was way back, maybe about 15 years or so ago. I don't remember if it was with Instant Shakespeare or Genesis Rep or maybe with Mid-Atlantic Theater. It's any number of companies
Yeah,
that I passed
probably
through.
Instant Shakespeare 15 years ago.
Perhaps,
Wow.
perhaps, but anyway, but the point being that you're one of those journeyman guys who's been around the scene for a long time, been doing a lot of great work at a high level for a long, long time, and right now I would say that you are, to my knowledge, one of the premier, if not the premier, fight instructors, especially focusing on Shakespeare and the classics in New York City. So tell us, Jared, about your company. Tell us about, I think you just started a course. Tell us about what you're up to with your work here in the city.
Yeah, it's been interesting times. So especially with stage combat, trying to find a way to navigate that and COVID safety and everything.
Hmm.
But we've started. I did some work via Zoom over the summer, and then we started working outside and doing mini seminars outside, and then now we're just keeping it very small and specific 6-week courses.
Hmm.
So the one that just started on Saturday is a longsword course and then a saber course
Hmm.
that's going to finish off by exploring applying those principles to fantasy swords,
Hmm.
like glow swords,
Oh,
if you will.
goodness. Oh, something
'Cause-
in the Star Wars realm, perhaps.
Well, some would say if it
If
wasn't trademarked.
right, trademarks not not being any problem here. So okay,
Yeah, but it's important because the way that that New York Combat for Stage and Screen looks at everything is from a martial foundation. There's a lot of sword fighting that happens out there that's fun and interesting, but it's not grounded in reality. And what I've found is that when we ground it in reality, the same way we do in acting, right? When we find that truth at the core of our performance,
hmm
we're able to extrapolate these performances, these fights that resonate with an audience in a way that that others don't, right?
Okay. Okay. So, Jared, let's backtrack for a second. Before you started your company, how long has your company been around?
21 years.
Oh, so
I've been
you've
here in New
been.
York teaching and training and playing.
How did you yourself get? Where did you train? What's your background?
Because I started in the mid '90s in Minnesota.
Hmm.
So I feel very fortunate that I found teachers there.
Hmm.
Michael Anderson and Don Preston are amazing, and so I got a great foundation there. I worked at the Minnesota Renaissance Fair actually, and that was an amazing experience because it was actually that Renaissance Fair that introduced me to the concept of stage combat.
Hmm.
Like I had no idea that was a thing people did until I saw a human chess match. So about 5 years after that, I was working in that very chess match
Hmm.
that had inspired me to start. Then from there, I actually started doing the historical and fencing, and I wanted more of that. So I moved to Edinburgh, Scotland,
Hmm.
and I was training with a master there. And at the same time that I was training in the historical fencing, I was also traveling back and forth to London and to really great guy Ian Stapleton in York, and doing a bunch of stage combat training with the BADC. So
Hmm.
got certifications there. And Yeah, then from there, while I was in Edinburgh, that's where I met my fencing master
Hmm.
the gentleman who'd become my fencing master who lives in New York. So
Hmm.
I wanted to train with him, and so I had to move to New York.
Okay. All roads somehow or other lead to New York.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, it's the center of the universe.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So, okay, so you get to New York, you do your training, and then at what point, after you've done all this training, all this, you got all this under your belt, at what point do you start to get involved in the scene and start to bring what you've learned and start teaching?
I had, because I'd been doing it for a while by the time I got to New York,
Hmm.
when I got here, I was learning. I'm constantly learning as well and
Hmm.
training. And so it's never like one stopped and the other started. I was teaching seminars and choreographing within a year of being here.
Okay, okay. And at the time, the scene has changed a lot from the mid to late '90s or early 2000s to now. What are some of the more memorable stops on your journey through the New York Shakespeare scene in terms of
Oh
the groups that
gosh.
you've worked with?
Well, definitely, like you mentioned, I think what if people don't know Paul and Instant Shakespeare readings, then they're missing out. If you're in the city, it's such a valuable resource
Hmm.
to get to know the plays,
Hmm.
because, and you know, the audiences that come,
Hmm.
and half of them get pissed off at me right away, because when I'm playmastering one of those readings, I always say, I love doing this because Shakespeare was not written to be read.
Right,
It was
right.
written to be heard, and it was written to be seen. And we
Hmm.
get this opportunity to bring it to life
Hmm.
in the Instant Shakespeare readings. And I think
Right.
it's the best and worst thing that ever happened to Shakespeare is it became an English subject.
Right,
Like,
right,
it's a theater subject. Don't read
right,
these things. It's
right.
awful.
It
That's
just
why
happens to
people hate
be
it.
that it just happens to be that they're so well written that they are the masterpieces of English drama, but they're drama.
Yeah.
They're meant to be performed on stage.
Yes.
Right.
And I think so many people are turned off to Shakespeare because it's crammed down their throat as an English subject
Hmm.
and then neutered to boot. Like, the first place almost everybody has to read in ninth or 10th grade is Romeo and Juliet.
Right.
But they don't explain the dick jokes. They don't
They don't.
explain the
They
sexual
don't.
humor. They don't
Hmm.
get it. They try to, at least in
Or
Minnesota, they try to cover all that up. So they take all the fun and the vibrancy of these plays and they mute a lot of them and then force you to read them. And maybe you get to read do a scene in English class. So,
hmm.
but on the flip side, I do want to say that I honestly don't believe that Shakespeare would be so popular if it wasn't an English subject.
Right, right. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's not limited to the theatrical audience. It's constantly there's people that are being introduced to it in all kind of different formats, from
Hmm.
young to old. So that it's definitely that's a great way in. So okay, so you get to New York and you're starting
Oh,
to
yeah, sorry. Instant Shakespeare readings,
hmm.
wonderful. Met so many amazing people, and those were my inroads.
Hmm.
I met Joe Hamill
Hmm.
doing The Winter's Tale, playmastered and cast him in the Winter's Tale, and we had a stuffed bear. Um, so he's the one who
The bear
introduced.
that pursues him exits
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
right.
brought a little stuffed bear, and we actually chased him around the room.
Very clever.
Um, so Joe's actually who introduced me to Nicholas Martin Smith from
Hmm.
Hudson Warehouse,
Right.
and when we sat down and talked in '09 to work on his Hamlet production, and like that was it. Like he's one of those people that our philosophies gelled with right away. When I'm choreographing violence, I want to make sure that the fights or moments of violence are revealing character, that it is furthering the story, that it is a seamless part of the production. I don't think anyone should stop and realize that a fight was choreographed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It should be engaging them in a way that's seamless and part of the
Hmm.
story, reveals character in a way that words never can, and then moves that story along. And through that, again, with the specificity of violence and kind
Hmm.
of, I remember having a conversation with him. It's like, okay, so how are we going to do this kill? And I said, well, how much time are we actually going to have from Laertes getting stabbed to his speech and when he rolls off? So then I'm thinking, all right, so what we chose was an upper liver wound. It went through there.
Hmm.
And that's because that times out better. If you aim and hit lower in the liver, they live a little longer.
Hmm.
Not live, but to unconscious. In theater or film, we don't really care about the reality in the sense that there's no difference for us between the time to unconscious and the time to actual death. Nobody cares, right? Laertes stops talking,
Right.
he's unconscious. It doesn't matter.
There you
But
go.
what I found is by giving actors the such a specific wound, and then I can walk them through how the body is shutting down and give
Hmm.
them all the specifics about what's happening.
Hmm.
It it gives them gives them more ammunition to create a dynamic performance in their death.
That's a wonderful way to look at it, and that adds to the visceral connection to the material. So you
Yeah.
mentioned you referenced the Hudson Warehouse Theater Company, and then you've done a lot of work with them in the last several years.
Yeah.
You're the resident fight director for them, correct?
We, as a company, we do most of the work for them. Yeah.
Hmm.
So nowadays, the company, New York Combat for Stage and Screen, is more than just me. I have up and coming apprentice fight directors, and so depending on the a lot of variables, what work has already been booked, and what level things are at, there's somebody. My company can provide those fight services, and so we're constantly working. I love when I do have the opportunity to work with them, and even if one of the other apprentices is working as the primary fight director, I still get in there whenever I can because it's a great environment to work. If you're an actor and you have the opportunity to work with them, get up there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Jared, something else I want to ask you about. We were talking to Julie Spina from the Rogue Ensemble Theater Company a little bit earlier, and we were
Yeah,
talking
pleasure.
about their production of Titus Andronicus. Talk to us about, in the current day and age, in the socially distanced coronavirus era, how do you choreograph your fight scenes, either A, in person when you can't actually do it outdoors, or even more difficult, via Zoom, where you can't even be in the same physical presence as another actor?
So, the beauty of the way that I teach this art is that the fundamental approach uh, is the same whether you're performing for stage or screen. There are variables, there are things that change when the medium changes, but fundamentally, the way that I approach it works in either. And so, since we've been doing Zoom, when I'm teaching via Zoom, we can still work on the angles. And the beauty of stage combat is that you don't have to be anywhere near them.
Hmm.
I can be 10 feet away from you and sell a haymaker that'll read as long as the angle is correct to the
Hmm.
audience.
Hmm.
And so what we focused on, if we're doing it via Zoom, is that aspect of it, is using the distance to really sell those angles. And even in person, the same thing.
Hmm.
And then I think that adversity fosters genius. And so we've had to find ways to maintain that distance and explore other things. For example, I can punch you with my fist, but we're a little too close, even if we're masked up. So
Hmm.
last week when we were doing that, instead of working on reactions from punches, we did it with chain.
Hmm.
right? So now I have to be 10 feet away and I still have to sell the angles to make that read,
Hmm.
right? So it's just all geometry at that point. From here, the fist goes across my face, but there's plenty of distance and then I react.
Right.
So it
Right.
doesn't matter if that's a chain or a fist.
You got it. You got it. That's great. Look, I mean, I've seen your work at various times over the years, and I from everyone I've spoken to, your name always comes up when it comes to fight direction, and everyone speaks of you with great praise. And even in our chat, we have, I think, one of your students, Clarabelle Actress, saying Jared is amazing. So you're
Oh,
getting universal praise all around.
thanks.
So Jared, if people want to come check you out, and is it too late for them to join the course that just started? Do you still have any spots?
Um, Probably, but they're welcome to reach out if they really wanted to do it. We could talk about that.
Okay,
Because
so
they
if they
only
want to,
missed one class. But
okay,
the email is info at NYC, or sorry, info at just NYCfilmfights at gmail.com or NYCstagecombat at gmail.com. Either one
okay,
works.
okay,
So.
okay, and Jared's information is up on the New York Shakespeare social media feeds. You have someone else, Anton Simone, saying Jared is the best. So
Anton,
you're getting a lot of love, Jared.
he's the best.
Right.
Uh,
Okay, so
Miss you,
guys,
Anton.
if you want to
Um,
check out, if you want, yes, go ahead, Jared.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention that one of the other major impacts for me is has been the work that I've done with Seth Dewar, the artistic director from New York Shakespeare,
Mm-hmm.
and we have collaborated on a book that will be coming out next year. And it's a two-volume set that will be addressing all, it's called Staging Shakespeare's Violence.
That sounds
So we
exciting.
look at all of the violence in Shakespeare. And when I say all of the violence, I mean we address the explicit violence, like they fight. Well, clearly they have to.
Mm-hmm.
But most of Shakespearean violence, of course, is implicit violence, where the character is saying, hold off thy hand. Well, you better have a fight director in there having Marcellus and Horatio holding Hamlet then,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I think the real value in that is going to be, and this is what I bring to the table when choreographing, is all the potential violence. And Shakespeare has all these opportunities. I say all the time that I get hired to choreograph the fight in Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I show up, we address the other six opportunities to utilize violence to move the story along. So it's actually more like 13, but all in the book coming out next year.
Well, Seth is an old colleague of mine whose work I admire greatly. So you're in good hands with Jared and with Seth and with their book coming up. You can reach out to to Jared at Jared Kirby on social media or
Mhm.
at the New York. The name of your company one more time.
Yeah, New York Combat for Stage and Screen. We just say NYCSS, but you'll see on Facebook it's Jared Kirby Teacher, or on Instagram Jared M Kirby, or you can find NYC Film Fights on Instagram also. That's the company page.
Okay. All right, guys. I couldn't recommend Jared highly enough. He's a fantastic fight instructor and a great actor as well. So find Jared and
Thank
Jared, thank you
you.
for your time. And hopefully we'll
Of
catch you
course,
again
thanks
another
for
time in the
inviting
future.
me.
You
It
got it.
was
All the
wonderful.
best. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, so that's Jared Kirby, one of the premier fight instructors in the New York Shakespeare scene. Definitely check him out if you want someone to really teach you how to do proper stage combat in New York. Okay, next we are going to a company that I